Hi, welcome to the the first video blog for tips4teaching.co.uk. I have said for ages that I was going to give it a go, and between a MacBook crashing and having to get a new one, and then a workload that went, I haven't got around to it. So here I am, just before Christmas, finally getting around to recording a very brief welcome video, and I'm going to do a few things. Just going to quickly talk through the resources that I've been tweeting about. First of all, the resources started off, as pretty much most things do with me, as a sketch note. Just hold that in for you there. So that's one of them there. So all the ideas for the questioning resource, which eventually went from a sketch note like this to a resource like this. So it started off, as all sorts of things do, I guess, trying to make your life a bit easier. In this particular case, I wanted to make my life a bit easier. I wanted to make the life of the PGC students I was mentoring at the time a little bit easier. And then I thought, actually, if I can make every teacher's life a little bit easier, why not? So I ran various training sessions in my school with staff, looking at what makes an outstanding lesson. And we kind of ended up moving away from what makes an outstanding lesson by, Ofsted's criteria, which they change when they wish. And we just looked at, what makes us happy as teachers? What things do we repeatedly do in a classroom? Which bits of good practice do we see other staff doing that we think, I wish I had the time to do that. I wish I could work out a really time-saving way of putting that type of practice into my lesson. And this is where it came from. I thought, well, how do you take the important parts of teaching and learning and make them so that they don't require as much planning as possible? So that you can just do them in a lesson when the moment takes you and not think, I should have created a resource for that. So I took some key areas, and these are what became these resources. So we've got questioning. Okay, pop that one down there. Objectives, the start of a lesson. We've got assessment, in this case, peer assessment. Vocabulary. Now there's two of these because it's slightly important. Progress, dreaded word. Peer review slips, I'm going to come back to that. And then what I call the vocabulary slips, the vocabulary review slips. So I'll start with these ones. We talked about vocabulary and how it was important and how it was one of those things that, unless it was a whole school focus, you maybe didn't put as much emphasis on the use of vocabulary in your subject. And then we discovered that some subjects just have to by their very nature. Languages, for example. Sciences were very good at doing that. And we thought, well, again, this is best practice. We should be sharing in a really easy way. So the resource I came up with was these little slips. Okay, now they started life off, all of these did, as A4 sheets of paper carved up into about 5 slips. You put the ruler across it, tear them off, give them out to kids. On the side here, it's got key vocabulary, so the student can list the key vocabulary. A description of, so they can describe one of the keywords, and using it in a sentence. Now it's really simple, but it's a resource you've got in your drawer that you can now do vocabulary activities in your lesson without having to really think, I'm going to plan in a vocabulary activity. Resource. The other vocabulary slip, because I might as well mention this now, is slightly more basic. It's just a blank sheet with key vocabulary for this topic. Now this came out of the fact that science department told me that at the start of every new topic, they introduce all the vocabulary at once and then refer to it as they're going through the module. And so they said, something like this, the lovely colour to stick at the first page of a new topic would be brilliant with all the key words on it. And then what we would do is later on use these on individual lessons. It would be a great idea. So I thought, that's a good point there. Again, making the best practice sharing stuff really easy across all sorts of subjects. Review slips. We looked at, again, how do you make assessment really easy? You sit and you observe lessons and you often come back to saying, you could have done some assessment there. And the easiest form of assessment with students is the classic what went well and even better if. So if you've got a nice, lovely, bright yellow slip like this with what went well and even better if on, you can do some peer assessment, some self-assessment in a lesson really, really easy. If you've got a student who finishes their work really quickly and comes up to you at the front of the desk, there's your differentiated extension activity straight away. Oh, go and conduct a self-review, or ask such and such sit next to you to do a peer assessment of you with a what went well and even better if. And it's bright and colourful, so it's going to stand out in the book, in the folder, for anybody who comes into your lesson to see what's been going on. No planning required. The objective slips divide people, which is perfectly fine. Not all of these slips are going to be used in every single lesson. Again, it's a blank space. By the end of today's lesson, I will. It's bright and colourful. Now, I found that this kind of slip worked really well with low ability groups. I needed something on the desk as they came into the room for them to start writing on straight away, just to calm them and quieten them down. These things worked brilliantly for them. Other staff said that actually it worked really well with higher ability groups because they liked to have a clear list of what they're going to do. So again, it comes down to what works for you. As a school, at the time when I was first developing these products, which is more than a year ago now, we looked at questioning and how we could develop questioning skills in staff as well as students. And the resource that I started using and has now been turned into this product has my key questions for this lesson are, and then answers to my key questions. Really simple. Students can put down questions at the start of the lesson, during the lesson. Again, it can be a differentiatable extension activity. So I'm finished my work. Are you? Here. What I'd like you to do is go away and come up with 3 questions based on the topic and then try and answer them. Straight into the book, into the folder. Differentiated extension. Progress sheets. Progress is a bit of a frightening word. You know, the whole panic everyone had about Ofsted. Students must be making this much progress. These slips were designed with that in mind to try and help people understand what kind of progress is happening in their lessons. Simple space for the objectives of the lesson. Space for a student to actually try and define what they feel they've learnt in that lesson. And then a really cool little bit on the end that I like where it just says, right, how can you prove it? How can they prove that they've learnt? And that's not for you to tell them. That's for them to think, well, I said I learnt this. How could I prove that to somebody? Just gets them to think a bit deeper about what they did in your lesson. And the last slips I'm going to explain are the peer assessment support, which is a slightly different approach to the what went well and even better if. This one says, what am I looking for? And what evidence have I found? Because I was using this with GCSE groups. So I was getting them to put down some exam-based criteria, for example, here, and then get a little bit more practiced at looking for that criteria and writing down what type of evidence they've found in here. All tools that any subject could use. And the idea really behind them was ways of allowing us to all do really good things, to develop that good practice, to put the good skills into any lesson we've got at the drop of a hat without having to worry about it, without having to think, well, such and such is the expert on questioning in my school, so I don't really do questioning in my lessons. You can do questioning in your lessons, especially if you've got something like that sitting in your drawer. You can differentiate by supporting students with things like that, activities, without having to put masses and masses of thought into it. It can be, you know, really useful little tools. So the total idea of that was to try and make life simpler and easier for all of us. It was brilliant developing them. You know, they started life as sketch notes and are now fabulous little resources that are, I mean, what, I think it's a pack of 5 for £2.40 on Yorkshire Purchasing Company, YPO, and I think I've been told by the 15th of January they'll be available to buy through Amazon, so that'll be cool as well. They're really cheap. They're really, you know, affordable in that sense. They're really easy to use, and I kind of want to find out how people use them. That's what I really want to have some information back on, is how do people use these in the lessons. Anyway, I said I wouldn't be very long, and that's 10 minutes, so I'm going to leave you with that. And the last thing to do is wish everybody a happy holiday and a very Merry Christmas. Take care.